Hey guys, Keith Keller, Melbourne, Australia. And we're here again on Virtually Unlimited TV to talk about the idea of promoting your music on live streaming video. I've been doing a lot of conversations around Twitter Spaces, which I love, but there's a couple of limitations to Twitter Spaces. One is it's audio only. Two, you can't get the recording easily. It's not an easy process to get the recording. And three, it's very limited in the sense that it is only available to record and make, it's only available to create on your phone. So Brian, who is our guest today, has actually been on my live streaming shows on Twitter Spaces, and it was phenomenal. And so what we thought we'd do is we'd try the exact same thing as a live stream on StreamYard and see whether or not the recording makes for a better experience and whether or not we can get as many people watching and viewing and sharing. The very important thing about StreamYard is it goes to multiple places at once. So you can actually send this file. I'm sending this file today to YouTube and Periscope, or the new Twitter. I have decided not to send it to LinkedIn. I didn't think it was appropriate for LinkedIn. But I'm very interested to know where you like to see your content. So let us know where you are in the world and tell us what platform, for instance, you prefer to see your site, your show on. I'd be very interested in that. Also, I'd love to know what devices you're watching the show on. Are you on a laptop or a PC? And I'd also love to know where you are in the world. And that's it's all a bit of fun for us there. So we use StreamYard, but we're going to talk about the various options. I'm going to bring Brian in now. Tell us, Matt, what you've been doing in the world of music as it relates to the internet, and what's been working so far, and what are you keen on exploring moving forward? I've got you there, man. Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, I can. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there must be a bit of a delay, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm getting like an echo and delay as well.
Okay. So do you want to try listening through? Oh, that's right. If you were listening through the speakers, there's a delay, and now you've got your headphones on to try and work that out. This is actually quite fascinating to me because with Twitter Spaces is an amazing idea in the sense that there's virtually no tech. You run it on your phone, and there's not much to do. But with StreamYard, we've actually, to be absolutely honest, guys, we've had quite major technical difficulties today. And this is really what I wanted to explore. I'm sort of riffing on the idea that in an ideal world, we want this to work. But unfortunately, it hasn't worked that well. And we're going to talk about the various options for live streaming your music, if indeed you do want to do that. And so I might actually have to almost sync with your delay there, Brian. If you've got a bit of a delay, I'll just let you speak once you've heard my question. So the question is, what have you been doing so far, and what's working, and what do you want to do moving forward in the live streaming online world?
Okay. I think I caught that through the delay. I have been mainly so far on Spotify, YouTube, and I'm trying to branch out into streaming. And so we did Twitter Spaces together 2 weeks ago, and we're trying StreamYard tonight, and so it's been a little tricky to set up, as we discussed beforehand. It didn't really recognize my microphone, but I don't think that that's what is creating the delay here.
Yeah, look, I can hear you pretty clearly, and your mouth syncs with the sound. It looks like the delay might be at your end, and I'm really interested in that because this particular show and my show in general, Virtually Unlimited TV, is about the idea of using tech.
Mm. Well, how about if I do this? How about if you cue up the music, and I'll take my headphones off and turn down so I don't hear the echo, and I'll play a song and come back on.
Oh, well, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got some music, a little video I've prepared earlier.
So this is a song that's it's in Dadgad tuning. Everything I'm planning to play tonight is in Dadgad tuning. And this is actually from my first record, Study of Hands. And it's when you want to really be the right person for someone, and you really want to do the right things for them and with them. And so this song's called Let Me Be That For You.
That is great. That's great. Now, this was really interesting. A couple of things happened there. One is you've got a very specific tuning for, and I think we've now sorted out the echo, so you might be able to hear me in real time, but you've got a very specific tuning there. I want to talk about that in a minute. But what I specifically want to talk about is the idea of whether or not you think, compared to Twitter Spaces, this format is worth pursuing. Do you see yourself doing more live streaming shows, or did Twitter Spaces suit you better, or would you just prefer to play in front of a crowd?
Well, of course, I would rather play in front of a live crowd, but I like streaming, and the thing I like the most about it is it reaches out to people that I otherwise wouldn't be able to reach out to.
Yeah.
And so you can make friends, people can enjoy the music, maybe they'll follow you on Twitter or Facebook. And so, or stream your music on whatever streaming service they want, see your YouTube videos. But I think the main thing is reaching people. It's nice when you're reaching people when you're in the same room with them. But I think it's wonderful, actually, that we can get together anywhere in the world and reach out and see things and meet people.
Yeah, well, I'm very interested in this idea because I'm in Melbourne, Australia, a long way from Philadelphia. And there's no way in the world I'd ever get to see you playing in person in your town. But now, from the miracle of technology, I can at least get a sense of what you're doing, and then go to your Spotify account or your YouTube account, or buy your CDs or get your vinyl. And I really want to do more in this field because, and today is a good and a bad example of this. We've had some technical challenges, and that's why people are not doing this, because it's hard to do. And it's a bit challenging for those who just want to play music. They don't really want to be fiddling around with the tech behind the scenes. They'd rather just turn on the amp and play. And I get that because I used to be a muso. But in the world of COVID, and in the world where travel might not be as accessible to most people anymore, where we're now starting to explore really interesting ideas about social media and social audio and live streaming. So today we're using a site called StreamYard, which I personally love and works very well for me. But today we have had some technical challenges as it relates to music. And I have to be honest that most people that I talk to that do music on StreamYard have told me that they've had some problems. And so with that in mind, there are several other sites which we should test in another show. One site which we know for sure works really well with music is a site called Restream, restream.io. And it's a direct competitor to StreamYard, but it's more focused on an audio experience. And so most of my musician friends use that. Have you heard of that? Have you heard of people using it?
And which platform did you ask about? I didn't quite catch it.
A Restream.
Restream. Okay. I have heard of Restream, and I plan to use Restream along with other, platforms. I mean, we're doing an experiment here, and Keith, I super appreciate that you have this set up and been so proactive, and we can do these experiments together. Like I said, I really appreciate it.
Oh, look, you're very, very welcome, because the point of view for here is that, look, I live in Melbourne, Australia, which I love. I love Melbourne, and I live an hour from the city, and I live near the beach. But Australia as a country is a long way away. And what that means is two things. It's a long way for me to get to you. And most importantly, most of the bands that I like have never been here because it's just too far to come. And all the big bands have come, Guns N' Roses and Kiss and Paul McCartney and Queen, they've all come. But the bands that I personally like, the sort of up and coming bands that have a bit of a grit to them and are still fresh and starting out, it's not within their bandwidth to come to Australia because it's a long way to get here, and we've only got 7 cities. They can't possibly even make their money back, let alone make money. So I'm exploring in great detail how this stuff works. So with that in mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts about when you try Restream, and let's get you back on the show. In fact, if you're running a show on Restream and you then set up an account, I'm happy to come on with you and share that experience, or even just retweet your show. The other thing I'd love to talk about is there's a site called Haps, which I love. I love it. Haps is a very, very good sort of follow-up from what Periscope was. Periscope has now gone away, no longer exists. And everyone that has been on Periscope, and a phrase loosely used there is a Periscope refugee, people that love Periscope and were disappointed that it went away, they've used this site called Haps. And the power of Haps, and I'd love you to try this too, the power of Haps, HAPPS.TV, is a couple of things. One, it's free. 2, it's in HD, 1080p. 3, it's purpose-built for creators, because the way that Haps works is it wants the viewers to fund the creators. So because it's free, they've obviously got to find some way to monetize the process to keep it going, keeping the lights on. So if you did a concert on, say, Haps, you would get little coins. It's a really cool thing to try. So a little bit like super hearts on Twitter, on Periscope. If people like what you're doing, they can give you a coin, and a thumbs up might be 10 cents, or a heart might be 50 cents, or a super heart might be $1. And the trick there for you is to do a really good show for an hour and then see if you could, make a little bit of money for that. And the great thing about the audience and the community is there's a really thriving audience there who are willing to pay to see content. So it's actually a marriage made in heaven. The people who watch the shows are willing to pay for them, and the people that do the shows can get paid. And have you heard of this? Have I sort of rung some bells there? Do you want to try?
I have heard of this and would love to do it and plan to. And so now I'm sort of getting my feet wet and think through what the strategy is that I would employ in order to be able to do it in a way that people are going to enjoy it the most. I hope to make some money from it, but my feeling is I make money when people enjoy it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
it's a fair exchange, isn't it? It's a fair exchange. So what we'll do is we'll set an intention to do maybe a show on Haps as an experiment. I've done several shows on it. I've got an account. I know exactly how it works. It looks very similar to this, just a slightly different vibe. And it is purpose-built for creators. So we have to do that show there. The other site I want to talk about, which I haven't tried but is completely free, is a site called Streamlabs. Now, the reason why Streamlabs is great is 2 things. One is, or 3 things really. It's free, and we're all sick of paying monthly fees for everything, right? It's good to sometimes sit back and try stuff for free. Although it is good to also upscale if the product is good. So Streamlabs is free. That's the first thing. Second thing is that it syncs with OBS. Now, you've mentioned OBS, and I'm going to ask you to talk about that in a minute. And 3, it's very, very popular in the Twitch community. So let me just riff on this. Have you thought of using OBS? And if so, how do you plan to use it? And does that mean that Streamlabs might fit that principle? Because it's pretty much exactly the same as this, except it's purpose-built to work with OBS. Is that of interest?
Yeah. No, I think that'd be great. As a matter of fact, when we first connected, I was right at the point where I was planning what my strategy would be, and was looking into OBS and setting things up. And you can use OBS with a variety of things. And so at the time, I'm like, okay, Keith reached out, and I thought, okay, that's a good way to start. But from here, as a sort of a launching pad, I do plan on probably OBS is the next step, maybe with Streamlabs. Yeah.
And the other thing I want to chat to you about is, have you thought of doing a show on Twitch? Because Twitch apparently is a very good platform for creators, mainly in gaming, but also in music. Have you heard good things about Twitch, and have you thought of doing it?
Yeah. Twitch, I've heard a fair amount about Twitch, and I've also discussed it with some other musicians who use it. And actually, in many ways, from what I understand, is Twitch works a lot like what we're doing here. It's music and it's discussion, and it's more of an experience of getting to know the people that are on and the artist that's playing.
Yeah.
As opposed to it, I've got a list of songs that I'm going to play. Everybody's quiet. I'm at the end. We're finished. There's really more give and take. And I know that there are people who do Twitch streams that are, like an hour or two long, and they end up playing like 6 or 8 songs.
Yeah.
So it's really more about the engagement than it is playing a set.
And that actually helps us sort of really morph back into Twitter Spaces, because we've done a series of Twitter Spaces together, and you did maybe 3 songs in the whole show, but as a result, you got to meet lots and lots and lots of great people, some of which actually asked you to play on their events. So do you see that live streaming with the video gives you a better sense of community, or is it just a different way of getting the word out? I'd be interested to know, because Twitter Spaces is working for us. Do you plan to do both, or do you have a preference?
Well, yeah. Twitter Spaces, I like Twitter Spaces. First of all, I like the spontaneity of Twitter Spaces. As a matter of fact, as a result of the stream that we did before in Twitter Spaces, I was invited into another Twitter Spaces later, a couple of days later, and then up to 4 or 5 songs, and there were other musicians on. It was a blast. So Twitter Spaces has a spontaneity to it, and I think each one of these different platforms probably brings a different character to it.
Yep.
But the thing that's nice about that is the people who come on are the people who were accustomed to that platform, and they know they like it. So it's really more important for me to adapt to the things that they like and try to work around the way that they like to enjoy a stream like that. So I've got a lot to learn as far as working with these platforms for the best experience of the people who were on.
I love what you've said there. I love what you've said there. This is actually really quite a mature approach. You know that the people that are on the stream like to consume content in a way that suits them. And I want to give you a really good example. On Twitter Spaces, a little bit like what you were saying with Twitch, it's very much an interactive conversation, question and answer. It's not a monologue, and it's not me talking at you or me playing for you. It's, here's the song. What do you think? What have you been doing? Here's the genesis of the song. Have you thought of this? Does this resonate? What are your experiences? And we've had several examples on Twitter Spaces where some people just want to talk, but they don't particularly want to listen. and this is quite a challenge. But we're now starting to find that this type of way of performing, or this particular way of sharing content, is very much, as you call it, give and take. It's question and answer. And when you're performing on stage, you're up there and you're performing songs and you talk a little bit in between, but you don't banter so much with the audience, because that's not really the format that they're used to. Whereas something like this, and most importantly Twitter Spaces, you've got this ability to interact. And we had and I'm sure the other ones you've had too, very engaging conversations, aren't they? They're very engaging ways of getting the word out.
Mm. Yeah. And I enjoy that. It takes, first of all, when you're performing on a Twitter Spaces, you have to be patient and enjoy what you're hearing from the people who are on, as opposed to concentrating entirely on what you're going to play. And it does give you the opportunity, as you described, to actually have more of an interaction with the people who were listening, ironically, than you would if you were playing live and them sitting right in front of you.
Yeah, because the thing that's interesting there is that when I've been a musician, I know exactly how it feels. You're on stage and you're in presenter mode. You've learnt the songs and they're tight, and you've performed them as a bass player and a keyboard player in a band setting. And the songs are tight and the band knows exactly what to do, and we know the order that we want to do the songs, and then it's up to the singer to sort of riff in between and maybe make a little bit of a comment and have some fun. But really, it's very much an us and them arrangement, unless you're very good, and some bands are very good at this, and that's why we go to see them, because they've got this interpersonal connection. But the other thing I'm very interested to know, Brian, is in the past, and not so distant past, the only thing available to us was to make a recording in your studio, then load it to YouTube, however long that took, and then push it out on YouTube, and there was no interaction with the client at all. Did you find that format satisfying, and did it work for you? Did it help you sell records? And do you think that the new process of more interaction is going to be a much more beneficial thing to you, or are you going to keep going with a bit of both?
So the platform that you're referring to is just straight up YouTube, like you post a video and then, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the great thing about YouTube when you first get started is you can just do it. You've got, even if you don't have a lot of experience, and when I started putting things on YouTube, there were nowhere near what I can do now. But it gets you started. It's not interactive, as you say. It's reactive, but it's not interactive.
Yeah.
But what I found is people like to see what you do on YouTube. When I post a song, like when I send things to the streaming services, Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Tidal, everything. I'll send links to people that I would hope would listen, and some people like that, and they'll listen, and they would prefer to hear the audio, and then there are other people, and I think Twitter is more open to people listening to a link to an audio only.
Okay.
Facebook is, if you're not posting a video, don't post. You can post your link to audio, but people don't really listen to it.
Okay. And I think the really key point here is, and we've got actually some people who are watching who might come on just to share the load. A big hello to Jai Reese. who's listening, and he's very welcome to come on. He's in New York, so the same time period as you, and we'll have some people coming on in a minute. But the thing is that the thing I love about live streaming is that with a lot less effort, you can reach a lot more people, unless you're famous. So, for instance, with Twitter Spaces, which in effect is live streaming audio, which is why I've called this show How to Promote Your Music with Live Streaming Video, Twitter Spaces and StreamYard and the plethora of sites that will come from this movement are a form of live streaming audio, because we are live streaming, we're having a chat, it's very conversational. Now, I would imagine, as you said, you've already had several requests to do gigs as a result of coming on other shows, because people get to hear you, or they get to hear your songs, and they get to resonate with you. So the discovery factor, I would imagine, of live streaming is very high. But still, we know that everyone's familiar with YouTube, and everyone's familiar with that format. But my personal experience is that I would spend a day loading videos to YouTube and editing them and making them look great and torturing myself over the quality. And then you'd load them, and then you'd come back the next day and you might have had a combined total of 50 views, because, you're not famous. And this is actually very common in the music space. I've got friends who've spent thousands of dollars recording songs and making videos, and no one's watching them. So I'm really, really, really fascinated to see how this plays out. But with that in mind, why don't you play another song? Tell us about the tuning and the sort of the history of the song, and I'll play that little piece of I'll play that little video that sets you up. And so I'll put you into full screen, and then you come in and play once the video finishes, and then
Okay.
So tell us what this song's about.
Okay. All right. Okay, I want to take my headphones off. Okay, thank you. So again, this song is same tuning, DAD-GAD, D-A-D-G-A-D, D-A-G-D-A-D. And so this is also a song off the Study of Hands record. And so I started off as really... I wasn't originally an acoustic player. I was more of an electric lead player.
Wow.
And just history-wise, about 10 years ago, I was introduced to fingerstyle, and I started playing in fingerstyle, and I was totally hooked. So I pretty much converted over to the style. But this song actually reminds me a little bit of the days of playing lead guitar. The song is called True Blue, so it's a little bit bluesy, but it's also about sincerity and those sorts of things. But it also reminds me of the very first concert I ever saw, which was B.B. King. I saw him when I was 13.
Wow.
And I didn't even have a guitar at the time, but I knew after I saw B.B. King that I was going to play guitar. So anyway, this song kind of harkens back to all that. It's called True Blue.
How cool is that? How cool is that? So that's the dad-gad tuning. What does that actually mean? Why do you tune the guitar differently than normally? Is it just a style in that genre you're playing?
Right. The reason that I use different tunings is it enables you to do things on the guitar that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do in standard tuning. Like, for instance, this is not a particularly deep tuning because it's going from an E down a whole step to a D. So it's not a real deep tuning, but this D here, this deep D, you couldn't play in standard tuning. It's not there. And the thing with DADGAD that's interesting is there's not either a major or a minor third in it. You know, like you hear of major chords that are very hopeful and happy, and minor chords that are sort of like sadder, moody. Most blues is in a minor key, as an example.
Yeah.
It doesn't have either one, so it leaves it open for you to use DADGAD tuning for either. And so it doesn't predetermine that it's a major key or a minor key. And for whatever reason, I'll tell you just a quick funny story about DADGAD.
Yes.
Using DADGAD. I use a lot of different tunings, and I was heard a lot about DADGAD. I'm like, I'm going to tune in DADGAD and I want to see what happens. And usually when I go into a new tuning I haven't been in before, 5 minutes in, you're writing a song because you just discover something that you could have never discovered before. So I'm in DADGAD and I'm playing around in it, hour, 2 hours. Next day, I'm like, nothing's happening. I'm like, maybe DADGAD's not for me. So probably 3-4 months later, I just retuned my guitar. I didn't even look to see what it was. I just wanted something new. I tuned it down. I just randomly, well, not randomly, but I tuned it until I'm like, that sounds interesting. I want to try that. So 5 minutes into it, I started writing a song. And so after I got going on the song for a while, I'm like, well, I better find out what the tuning is. It was DADGAD.
Okay. So DADGAD, for those people who are not musical in the audience, DAD, DAG, DAD?
Yeah, it's DAD, dad like your father, and then GAD, GAD.
Okay. And how does that compare to standard tuning?
Standard tuning is E, A, G, D, B, E.
Okay. So I guess the big question is, if everyone's tuned to DADGAD, can you play together? Do people tend to play together with these tunings, or is this really a bit of a solo project?
Well, that's a good question. So let's say you're in a band and you're playing as a guitar player in DADGAD. The bass player is not going to retune because, or he may have like a 5 or a 6 string bass or something like that, and he could have the lower strings deeper, you know. But generally speaking, the bass player doesn't really need to because they're playing single lines, they're playing single notes generally, and of course the keyboard player can't.
What about another guitarist?
I'm sorry. Other
What
guitar
about
players?
another guitarist?
Well, if it were me, like if I were to do something where I wrote a song and left the melody out and then layered on top of it a lead part to put the melody in later. I don't do that now because I do it all at the same time. But if I was going to do that, probably what I would do if it was a song in DADGAD is I would do the basic part of it in DADGAD, but I would probably tune the standard tuning for my for the lead. And the reason for that is the patterns for playing single line notes, like for lead playing, is very, very well structured in standard tuning. There's a reason why standard tuning is the standard, and it's very good for that. So I would, because the patterns are well laid out and well worked out guitar-wise in standard tuning. But when you're doing fingerstyle, you're doing everything at the same time. That's not really that big a consideration, and so you really want to create textures and sounds and big kind of soundscapes, with the guitar and a lot of the alternate tunings really do a great job of that.
Yeah, you can tell it's a different process, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a totally different process. So, we chatted a lot. We've been chatting almost an hour, and I'm really interested in how you think you might move forward now that we've had this discussion. You've recorded videos, you've put them on YouTube, and they've gone as well as they've gone, and they've sold X number of albums and X number of downloads on Spotify. What do you think you might try next? Are you going to do a bit more Twitter Spaces, or are you going to try the OBS Streamlabs thing, or does HAPS interest you? I'd love to know where we can take it from here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the $64,000 question. Well, as a composer, basically, it's probably more than anything else, I'm a composer, but you want to produce things for people to hear them, and then the real question is what is going to maximize people's enjoyment of what you do?
Yeah,
and so I love to record. I'm in meeting from the studio here. I can't use the studio mics on StreamYard tonight here, but I love doing that. I love to write. I'll probably continue recording and releasing. I've got several more singles queued up that are going to release over the course of the next several months that have already been recorded, and they're part of an album, actually, Keith, if you don't mind me mentioning.
Oh, absolutely. No, please do.
Yeah, the album is called 10-Piece Puzzle. And I didn't release the whole thing to the streaming services because once you do that, it's then out there. And they give you for every release you do, you get a pitch opportunity for their playlist, their editorial playlist. So if you release an album that's 10 songs, you can pitch one song, it's over. So the probability of getting on their playlist isn't very high, but at least you have it's kind of like the lottery. You can't win if you don't play, So so I'm releasing them as singles, but on my Bandcamp site and on my website, the whole album's there. So you can listen to it, you can download it if you want, and I would certainly be happy if you purchased it. But you can listen to it, and so that's again on my Bandcamp. So it's Brian, BRIAN, Eyre, EYRE on Bandcamp, and then my website is brianeyremusic.com.
Yeah, it's just really fascinating the way we're all doing this, because I've done, and I'm doing one tomorrow. I've done Twitter Spaces with no preparation. Twitter Spaces is an audio only format. using the Twitter's ecosystem. I have done Twitter Spaces with no preparation, and I've had 250 people on the call and 28 people putting their hands up to speak. And the real big question is, you got to go where the people are. If people are not using YouTube to discover music anymore, that is a little sad, but if it is the truth, then you have to go where the people are. And I'm doing the experiments from the point of view that I want to find where the people are. I think we can safely say that, certainly as it relates to this environment, StreamYard is not what I'd personally recommend for a musical experience. You had a lot of trouble syncing the mic. We did have quite a bit of troubleshooting before the call to get it to work. At the end of the day, we just simply pushed record and let it run with what we could manage, but it wasn't ideal. And as a sonic person, that must have really annoyed you, I'm guessing. You must be really sort of reeling with the idea that you're just running through the webcam, yeah?
Well, I will say learning to adapt and being spontaneous is something that you have to learn. And Keith, something that you've really, as we've talked, you've really emphasized, and I appreciate that. And so a couple of things with StreamYard is, like, for instance, the reason that I'm going so close, I'm trying to read your lips because for whatever reason, I'm getting a repeat. So I'm trying to hear. So if anybody's like, why is he like so, gawking at the screen like that? That's why. But it's an experiment. They'll probably work these things out. There's other formats. I hope that other people, and I'd be interested, is anyone else getting this echo?
Well, there is a delay. So there is a delay, and there's also a sort of static type feeling when you talk. The mic is very crackly.
Okay.
So, and this is fascinating to know, because we can refer back to this as our baseline, our benchmark, and say this is the first one we did. And the example I often use is that Gary V, a very famous person in the marketing game, he did a series of videos to sell wine, and the first one was as good as you'd expect someone who's done it for the first time. Pretty adequate, but not awesome. But he did 1,000 of them every day for 3 years. And by the time he got to the 1,000th episode, he was really good at it. Right? So if we do this as the benchmark and say, okay, this is day one, this is ground zero, so to speak. This is the first one we've done, and this is as good as it gets on StreamYard, running through the webcam with a bit of a delay, and we're making do. But if we do these regularly, and we try various sites, and we try various pieces of tech, and then we go, actually, I found this piece of tech, like, for instance, as an example, I found this piece of tech that blurs out my background. Now, that costs me $10 a quarter. I can buy the whole thing for $25 a month. And every time I go on the webcam now, I can just blur the background. And, if it wasn't blurry, it'd be a bit messy. I could clean up, which would also look good. But this is a piece of tech that solves one problem. It makes my background blurry. Now that I know that, I use it every time. So when I first started webcams, my live streams, they were really horrible. And I don't know if I want to share those. But you got to start somewhere, haven't you? And if you keep doing it and we keep experimenting, then it doesn't take you long and it doesn't cost you very much. And suddenly the show is looking quite awesome and it sounds good. And then it's an alternative for all those people that can't come to Philadelphia to see you play. And more importantly, it gives you an alternative for all the venues that might disappear as a result of the pandemic. I mean, imagine all the places that can't operate because no one can go to them. You might not have that problem, but in Australia, all the shops are closing down and all the cafes are closing down and all the restaurants are folding because we can't go to them. We want to go to them, but we're not allowed. So I'm working on solutions, and sometimes the shows are a little bit less than best. And that's because I want to do all this hack work so that when people come to it and they say, "Oh, mate, I'm too embarrassed to go on live just in case it doesn't work." Well, I'm happy to go on live because we've learned something today, haven't we? We've learned that StreamYard may be not the best thing for music. And that when we do this again, we'll try another format. And then we've got a direct comparison. We've got the Twitter Spaces one, which wasn't recorded, but we know what happened.
Mhm.
We've got the StreamYard version, which we do have the recording for. And I'm happy to send it to you so you can have it as in your glory box if you like, and you can even edit it out if you want to put anything on Twitter or YouTube. And then we'll have a HAPS version. We'll have a Streamlabs version. We'll have an OBS version. And we'll have a version on all the different sites that come. And then you'll be able to say, Keith, I've done a couple of experiments and I really like X. And we'll have another show about that. You can say, look, I found this really cool site, Keith. Look at what we did 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago, and look at how far we've taken it. Are you up for that? Are you up for doing some experiments and coming back on?
Right. I'm learning, and I also appreciate. I just want to say I appreciate the patience of the people who were on for the for us to be able to do this, and I hope that it's entertaining, to people, and you could hear what I was playing in those sorts of things. So the people are giving their time to do this, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, look, I think you're very welcome about this idea that we've shared that you've got a new album coming out. I'm gonna finish off now. You want to do one last song? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there. Do one last song, and then we'll wrap it up at the top of the hour. And then that's given people a very good sense of what this is about. So I'll play that little music video, and you can explain what it's about.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So this the last song that I'm gonna do is a little bit of a quieter, not quite as rambunctious as the last one, but it's off the new record. Again, it's the record is 10-Piece Puzzle. This song was I go to Andy McKee. Those who are fingerstyle people, or many other people know Andy McKee as well. Wonderful guy, and incredible player, incredible writer, but just a top-notch, wonderful guy. And so most years when it's not a pandemic, he has an event called the Musicarium, and he is a huge Michael Hedges fan, as I am as well. I really come to a much greater appreciation of Michael Hedges' brilliance, actually, over the years. And at each one of the Musicariums, there's been a night dedicated to Michael Hedges, who passed away many years ago. He was killed in a car accident. And so I was, one of those times that I was there, I was just so inspired by that. When I got back from the Musicarium, which is out on the West Coast, and we live on the East Coast, I was so inspired by it that I wrote the song. And the other thing too, with you can hear Michael Hedges' music, sort of his search for things meaningful. And so the name of this song, I think, is fitting to that, and it's called "Where Does It Come From?"
That is brilliant. Just brilliant. And this exactly illustrates the power of live streaming. We saw you playing. We saw the passion in your eyes. We saw the absolute determination to get your hands around that instrument, you know, and that's the power of the video component.
Yeah. Thank you. And there's the visual component, especially of this single instrument thing, I think is important.
Yeah. Look, we are indeed having some technical challenges with the video component, but this does give us some really amazing ideas. And so we've been experimenting here with StreamYard. My gut feeling is that it's not the right platform for music, even though I do love it and I use it all the time. I won't necessarily be recommending it for the musical experience, but we have had that learning. What we are going to do is we're going to wrap it up today, but we're more importantly going to do some more experiments with other sites, Haps, Streamlabs, Restream. And equally as importantly, we're going to keep going with the Twitter Spaces audio-only format, because what you lose in the visual element, you make up for in engagement. So I've got another Twitter Spaces tomorrow, and I have them regularly because they are very low tech and I can run them on my phone. So look, mate, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and being a great sport with all these experiments we're running. It wasn't the best technically, but I think it was a good experience and a good learning, wasn't it? Okay. So
well, thank you very much, Keith, as always, for having me on, doing the things that you do to help all of us, experiment and learn these different things. And so I would be very happy to come on and do an experiment again with you. And I hope that what people heard, they enjoyed what they could hear, and look forward to doing this again with you in the future.
Oh, that's brilliant. Look, you've been watching an experimental show really today called How to Promote Your Music Using Live Streaming. Today we've been using StreamYard, but we'll do more of these experiments. And I just really wanted to thank you for watching today, and to thank Brian for coming on. So follow him on all of his social media platforms, and we'll see you around the traps, and we'll have more of these coming soon. We'll see you later.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. See ya.